The rain hammered against the windows of St. Mary's Private Hospital as Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway. The expensive wheels moved silently across the polished floor, but her heart was anything but quiet. She had been working as a cleaning lady at this exclusive hospital for 3 years, and she had never seen anything like what was happening in room 312. Victoria Blackwood, the 22-year-old daughter of billionaire Richard Blackwood, lay unconscious in the private suite. The young woman had been rushed to the hospital 5 days ago after collapsing during a charity gala. The doctors said it was a mysterious illness that they couldn't identify. Every test came back normal, but Victoria kept getting worse. Maria had cleaned Victoria's room every day since she arrived. She watched as the beautiful young woman grew paler and weaker. The expensive machines around her bed beeped constantly, and nurses came and went with worried faces. Mr. Blackwood spent every moment by his daughter's side, his usually confident voice now shaking when he spoke to the doctors. As Maria entered room 312 with her supplies, she noticed something that made her stop. Victoria's breathing was more labored than yesterday, and her skin looked almost gray. The heart monitor showed an irregular pattern that even Maria, with no medical training, could see was wrong. Dr. Harrison, the head physician, was speaking quietly with Mr. Blackwood near the window. "I'm sorry, Richard. We've run every test imaginable. Her organs are shutting down one by one, and we can't find the cause. If this continues, we may only have a few more days." Mr. Blackwood's face crumpled. This powerful man who controlled a business empire worth billions was helpless as he watched his only daughter slip away. There has to be something. Money is no object. Fly in specialists from anywhere in the world. I'll pay anything. We already have the best team assembled, Dr. Harrison said gently. Sometimes, Richard, medicine has its limits. Maria quietly began cleaning, trying not to listen to the heartbreaking conversation. But she couldn't help noticing things. She had grown up in a poor neighborhood where people couldn't afford good health care. Her grandmother had taught her to watch for signs of illness because they often had to take care of themselves. As she dusted the medical equipment, Maria's eyes fell on the foredrip that was slowly feeding fluid into Victoria's arm. Something about it looked different today. The bag was the same clear plastic as always, but the liquid inside seemed slightly cloudy. Yesterday, it had been perfectly clear like water. Maria frowned and looked closer. She had cleaned this room so many times that she noticed even small changes. The fluid definitely looked different. She glanced around the room to see if anyone was watching, then carefully examined the bag. There was definitely something in the liquid that shouldn't be there. Her heart began to race. Could someone be poisoning Victoria? The thought seemed impossible. This was one of the most expensive hospitals in the country, with security cameras everywhere and highly trained staff. But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She remembered her grandmother's words. "Mija, when something doesn't look right, trust your eyes. Rich people get sick just like poor people, but they also have more enemies." Maria quickly finished cleaning and left the room, her mind spinning. She walked to the supply closet where she kept her cleaning materials and tried to think clearly. If Victoria was being poisoned through her then someone with access to the medical supplies was responsible. But who would want to hurt a young woman who spent her time organizing charity events? The next morning, Maria arrived at work early. She had barely slept, thinking about what she had seen. She decided to pay closer attention to everyone who entered Victoria's room. As she cleaned the hallways, she made mental notes of every nurse, doctor, and visitor who went in and out. Nurse Jennifer Walsh was Victoria's primary caregiver. She was a tall, blonde woman in her 30s who had worked at the hospital for 2 years. Maria had always found her cold and unfriendly, unlike the other nurses who at least smiled when they saw her. Dr. Marcus Chun was the young specialist who had been assigned to Victoria's case. He seemed genuinely concerned about his patient and spent hours reviewing her charts. Maria had seen him working late into the night, trying to solve the mystery of Victoria's illness. Then, there was David Morrison, Mr. Blackwood's personal assistant. He visited twice a day to bring his boss meals and handle phone calls. He was always polite to the staff and seemed devoted to the Blackwood family. As Maria cleaned room 312 that afternoon, she watched Nurse Walsh change Victoria's bag. The woman's movements were quick and efficient, but something about her behavior seemed nervous. When she thought no one was looking, Walsh glanced around the room before connecting the new bag. Maria pretended to be busy organizing her supplies while keeping her eyes on the nurse. After Walsh left, she examined the new 4 bag. Once again, the fluid looked slightly cloudy instead of perfectly clear. Her suspicions were growing stronger, but Maria knew she needed proof. She was just a cleaning lady with no education. Who would believe her if she accused a trained nurse of poisoning a patient? She needed to catch Walsh in the act or find evidence that couldn't be ignored. That evening, Maria spoke to her neighbor, Rosa, who worked as a nurse's aide at a public hospital across town. Rosa, if someone wanted to poison a patient through their 4, what would that look like? Rosa raised her eyebrows. That's a strange question, Maria. Why do you ask? I'm watching a telenovela where this happens, Maria lied. I was curious if it was realistic. Well, it would be very dangerous, Rosa explained. For fluids should always be completely clear. If someone added something harmful, it might make the liquid cloudy or change the color slightly. But in a good hospital, there are so many safety checks that it would be almost impossible. Almost impossible, but not completely impossible, Maria thought. The next day was Sunday, and the hospital was quieter than usual. Fewer doctors made rounds, and the nursing staff was reduced. Maria decided this would be her best chance to investigate further. She arrived at work early and went straight to the supply room where the 4 bags were stored. The door was usually locked, but she had noticed that it was sometimes left open during shift changes. Today she was lucky. The door was unlocked. Inside the supply room, Maria found boxes of 4 fluid bags. She carefully examined several bags, and they were all perfectly clear. She took note of the lot numbers and expiration dates printed on the labels. Later, when she cleaned Victoria's room, she looked at the bag that was currently connected to the young woman's 4. The lot number was the same as the clear bag she had seen in the supply room, but this fluid was definitely cloudy. Someone was tampering with the 4 bags after they left the supply room, but before they were connected to Victoria's 4 line. Maria was now certain that Victoria Blackwood was being poisoned, but she still didn't know who was responsible or how to prove it. As she left Victoria's room that day, Maria overheard Dr. Harrison speaking to Mr. Blackwood in the hallway. Her kidney function is declining rapidly. If we don't find the cause soon, we may need to discuss end-of-life care. Mr. Blackwood's voice broke. She's my only child, Harrison. Her mother died when Victoria was born, and she's all I have left. Please, there has to be something. Maria's heart ached for the grieving father, but it also strengthened her resolve. She had to find a way to expose whoever was doing this to Victoria. The young woman was innocent, and her father was suffering terribly. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her own daughter, Isabella, who was studying nursing at community college. Isabella had always dreamed of helping people, and she often talked about the ethical responsibilities that came with medical training. Mama, Isabella had said just last week, when you become a nurse, you take an oath to do no harm. The patients trust you with their lives. The irony wasn't lost on Maria. Here was a nurse who had taken that same oath, apparently using her position to slowly murder a young woman. Monday morning brought new urgency to Victoria's case. When Maria arrived at work, she could hear raised voices coming from room 312. Dr. Harrison was speaking with a team of specialists who had been flown in from Johns Hopkins Hospital. We need to consider that this might be an intentional poisoning, one of the visiting doctors was saying. The symptom pattern doesn't match any known disease. Maria's blood ran cold. The doctors were finally considering the possibility she had suspected all along. But she also knew that if the poisoner realized the medical team was getting suspicious, they might accelerate their plan. She decided she couldn't wait any longer. She had to find solid proof and expose the truth before Victoria died. As Maria cleaned the hallways that day, she developed a plan. She would hide in the supply closet that evening and watch who had access to the 4 bags. If she could catch someone tampering with Victoria's medication, she would have the evidence needed to save the young woman's life. The plan was risky. If she was caught hiding in a restricted area, she would certainly lose her job. But Maria thought about Victoria's pale face and her father's desperate tears. Some things were more important than a paycheck. That evening, Maria told her supervisor that she needed to finish some extra cleaning in the medical wing. She waited until the hallways were quiet, then slipped into the supply closet and hid behind a stack of boxes. The room was dark except for the light coming under the door. Hours passed slowly. Maria's legs cramped from crouching in the small space, but she remained alert. Near midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. The supply room door opened, and someone entered with a small flashlight. Maria held her breath and peered around the boxes. In the dim light, she could see a figure in scrubs moving toward the supply area. The person selected a bag of fluid and used a syringe to inject something into the bag through the injection port. The figure was careful and methodical, obviously experienced with medical procedures. After contaminating the bag, they placed it in a specific location where it would be easily selected for Victoria's next change. As the person turned to leave, the flashlight briefly illuminated their face. Maria gasped silently as she recognized Nurse Jennifer Walsh. Her suspicions had been correct, but seeing the proof still shocked her. Walsh left the supply room quietly, and Maria waited several more minutes before emerging from her hiding place. She looked at the contaminated bag, her hands shaking with anger and fear. This woman was systematically poisoning Victoria, and she had been getting away with it for days. But Maria still needed more evidence. Catching Walsh in the act was good, but she needed to understand why this was happening and find proof that others would believe. Maria arrived at the hospital the next morning with a heavy heart and a clear mission. She had barely managed 2 hours of sleep after witnessing Nurse Walsh contaminating Victoria's bag. Every moment that passed meant more poison was entering the young woman's system, and Maria knew she was running out of time. The morning shift was just beginning when Maria entered the hospital. She noticed immediately that security seemed tighter than usual. 2 guards were stationed near the main entrance, and she overheard them discussing heightened protocols due to the VIP patient's condition. As she gathered her cleaning supplies, Maria overheard a conversation between 2 nurses that made her blood run cold. Victoria Blackwood took a turn for the worse overnight, one nurse whispered. Dr. Harrison thinks she might not make it through the day. Her father hasn't left her bedside. Maria's hands trembled as she gripped her mop handle. She was too late. While she had been sleeping, Victoria had been receiving more of Walsh's poison. The young woman was dying faster than anyone expected. She rushed to room 312, her cleaning cart rattling loudly in her haste. Through the glass doors, she could see Mr. Blackwood holding his daughter's hand, while Dr. Harrison checked her vital signs. Victoria looked even paler than yesterday, and the machines around her bed were beeping more frantically. Maria pretended to clean the hallway while listening to the doctor's conversation. Dr. Harrison was speaking quietly with the specialist from Johns Hopkins. Her liver function has dropped dramatically overnight, Dr. Harrison said. Whatever is causing this is accelerating. We need to consider the possibility of foul play more seriously. One of the visiting specialists nodded grimly. I've seen similar symptoms in cases of slow poisoning, but the toxicology reports keep coming back negative. If someone is doing this deliberately, they're using something sophisticated. Should we involve the police? Dr. Harrison asked. Not yet, the specialist replied. We need concrete evidence. False accusations against medical staff could destroy careers and create chaos in the hospital. Maria's frustration grew. The doctors suspected poisoning, but they were moving too slowly. They were focused on following proper procedures while Victoria was dying. She knew she had to take action herself, even if it meant risking everything. As the morning progressed, Maria developed a desperate plan. She would document Walsh's next attempt to poison Victoria and then immediately alert security. It was dangerous, but it might be Victoria's only chance. Around noon, Maria positioned herself in a supply closet near room 312 with a small camera she had borrowed from her daughter Isabella. The camera was old, but it still worked well enough to record video. She planned to follow Walsh and capture evidence of her tampering with the bags. She didn't have to wait long. Walsh appeared in the hallway carrying a fresh bag toward Victoria's room. Maria quietly followed, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. Walsh entered room 312 and began the process of changing Victoria's But something was different this time. Walsh seemed nervous and kept glancing toward the door. She worked more quickly than usual, and Maria noticed she was sweating despite the cool temperature in the hospital. As Walsh prepared to connect the new 4-bag, Maria crept closer to the room, holding her camera ready. Through the partially open door, she could see Walsh inject something into the 4-bag with a small syringe before connecting it to Victoria's line. Maria's heart pounded as she recorded the injection. Finally, she had proof. But, as she stepped back from the door, her foot knocked against a metal cart that she hadn't seen in the dim hallway. The loud clang echoed through the corridor, and Walsh spun around. For a moment, the two women stared at each other. Walsh's face went from surprise to fury as she realized what Maria had witnessed. "What are you doing here?" Walsh demanded, stepping out of Victoria's room. "This is a restricted area for cleaning staff." Maria tried to keep her voice steady. "I was just cleaning the hallway. I didn't see anything." But Walsh wasn't fooled. She had noticed the camera in Maria's hands, and her expression became dangerous. "Give me that camera. Now." "I don't know what you mean," Maria said, backing away slowly. Walsh moved closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, little cleaning lady. Give me the camera, or you'll regret it for the rest of your very short life." Maria turned and ran. She clutched the camera tightly as she rushed through the hospital corridors, Walsh's footsteps echoing behind her. She needed to reach security or find Dr. Harrison before Walsh could stop her. But Walsh was younger and faster. She caught up to Maria near the elevator and grabbed her arm roughly. "Nobody will believe a word you say," Walsh hissed. "You're just an uneducated immigrant trying to get attention. I'm a registered nurse with an excellent reputation." Maria tried to pull away, but Walsh's grip was strong. "Let me go. I have proof of what you're doing to Victoria." "Proof?" Walsh laughed coldly. "You have a blurry video that could show anything. Besides, who's going to believe that I would risk my career to hurt a patient? I have no motive." For the first time, Maria realized she didn't understand why Walsh was poisoning Victoria. "Why are you doing this?" "Victoria never hurt anyone. She helps people with her charity work." Walsh's expression became bitter. "Victoria Blackwood gets everything handed to her because she was born rich. She's never worked for anything in her life, never struggled, never had to worry about paying bills or taking care of sick parents." "That doesn't give you the right to kill her," Maria said. "Doesn't it?" Walsh replied. "Do you know how much money her father spends on her medical care in just 1 week? Enough to fund a free clinic for a whole year. The world would be better off without spoiled rich girls who waste resources." Maria was horrified by the nurse's twisted logic. "You became a nurse to help people, not to decide who deserves to live or die." "I became a nurse because it was the only way I could afford college," Walsh snapped. "I've worked double shifts for years while watching people like Victoria throw away more money in a day than I'll ever make. Someone needs to balance the scales." Walsh was clearly unstable, driven by years of resentment toward wealthy patients. Maria realized she was dealing with someone who had completely lost touch with her moral responsibilities as a healthcare provider. "Please," Maria said, trying to appeal to whatever humanity Walsh might have left. "Victoria is innocent. If you're angry at inequality in the world, hurting one person won't fix anything." But Walsh was beyond reason. She tried to grab the camera from Maria's hands, and the two women struggled in the hallway. The camera fell to the floor, and Maria watched in horror as it skidded across the polished surface. At that moment, Dr. Harrison appeared around the corner with 2 security guards. He had been making his rounds when he heard the commotion. "What's going on here?" Dr. Harrison demanded. Walsh immediately composed herself and pointed at Maria. "This cleaning woman was trying to steal medical supplies. I caught her going through the supply closet." "That's not true," Maria protested. "She's been poisoning Victoria Blackwood. I have it recorded on my camera." Dr. Harrison looked confused and concerned. He picked up the camera from the floor and examined it. "Maria, these are serious accusations. Are you certain about what you're claiming?" Before Maria could answer, one of the security guards spoke up. "Doctor, we should check the security cameras in the hallways. They'll show us what really happened." Walsh's face went pale. In her anger at being discovered, she had forgotten about the hospital's extensive surveillance system. Dr. Harrison nodded. "Good thinking. Let's review the footage immediately." He turned to Walsh. "Jennifer, you'll need to come with us to security." "This is ridiculous," Walsh protested. I'm a respected member of the medical staff. You can't seriously believe the word of a cleaning lady over mine. But Dr. Harrison was already walking toward the security office, and the guards gestured for both women to follow. Maria's heart was racing, but she felt hopeful for the first time in days. The truth was finally going to come out. In the security office, the chief of security pulled up the camera footage from the hallways near room 312. The video clearly showed Walsh injecting something into Victoria's bag before Maria appeared with her camera. "My God," Dr. Harrison whispered. "Jennifer, what have you done?" Walsh's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Working here, watching rich people get the best care while poor patients suffer. Victoria Blackwood represents everything wrong with our healthcare system." "So you decided to murder her?" Dr. Harrison asked in disbelief. "I didn't plan for it to happen this way," Walsh said, tears streaming down her face. "At first, I just wanted to make her a little sick so her father would understand what it's like to worry about medical bills. But then, it became easier to keep going." The security chief was already on the phone with the police. "We need officers at St. Mary's Hospital immediately. We have a suspect in custody for attempted murder." Dr. Harrison turned to Maria with amazement and gratitude. "Maria, you may have saved Victoria's life. How did you know what was happening?" Maria explained how she had noticed the cloudy appearance of the four fluids and had become suspicious of Walsh's behavior. "My grandmother always taught me to trust my eyes when something didn't look right." "Your grandmother was a wise woman," Dr. Harrison said. "We need to get Victoria into emergency treatment immediately. Can you tell us exactly what you saw Walsh inject into the 4 bags?" Maria described everything she had witnessed over the past few days. As she spoke, Dr. Harrison's expression grew more urgent. "We need to flush Victoria's system and start her on specific antidotes," he said. "Jennifer, what exactly were you using to poison her?" Walsh remained silent, but the security chief found several vials in her locker that she had been forced to open. The labels identified various substances that, when combined, could cause the symptoms Victoria had been experiencing. Within minutes, Victoria was being moved to the 3 days had passed since Nurse Walsh's arrest, and Victoria Blackwood remained unconscious in the intensive care unit. The poison had been flushed from her system, and her organ function was improving steadily, but she still hadn't opened her eyes. Dr. Harrison assured everyone that this was normal after such severe poisoning. But Mr. Blackwood was growing more anxious with each passing hour. Maria continued her work at the hospital, but everything felt different now. News of her heroic actions had spread throughout St. Mary's, and she was no longer invisible. Doctors nodded respectfully when they saw her in the hallways. Nurses smiled and thanked her for her service. Even the hospital administrators had taken notice of the cleaning lady who had saved their most important patient. Maria Santos, the hospital director, Dr. Williams, had said when he personally thanked her, "You exemplify the best qualities of our healthcare team. Your attention to detail and courage under pressure saved a life." But Maria felt uncomfortable with all the attention. She had simply done what seemed right at the time. She hadn't thought of herself as heroic. She had just been a concerned person who noticed something wrong and decided to act. On Thursday morning, Maria was cleaning the hallway near the ICU when she heard excited voices coming from Victoria's room. She looked through the glass doors and saw Dr. Harrison and Mr. Blackwood standing beside the bed, both of them smiling broadly. Victoria's eyes were open. Maria felt tears of relief running down her face. The young woman was finally awake after her terrible ordeal. Through the glass, Maria could see Victoria moving her lips, apparently trying to speak to her father. Mr. Blackwood was holding her hand and crying openly, his usually composed businessman's demeanor completely gone. Dr. Harrison emerged from the room and spotted Maria in the hallway. "She's awake," he said with a huge smile. "Victoria is conscious and responsive." Her first words were asking what happened to her. "Will she be okay?" Maria asked. "She'll need physical therapy to regain her strength, and there may be some lingering effects from the poisoning, but yes, she's going to make a full recovery. The human body is remarkably resilient when given the chance to heal properly." Over the next few hours, Maria watched as Victoria's room filled with visitors. Friends, Family members and business associates all came to see the young woman who had survived such a close call with death. The flowers and get well cards piled up until the room looked more like a garden than a hospital suite. But Maria noticed that Victoria seemed overwhelmed by all the attention. Through the glass doors, she could see the young woman looking tired and sometimes confused by the number of people surrounding her bed. That evening, as Maria was finishing her shift, she saw Mr. Blackwood sitting alone in the family waiting area. He looked exhausted after days of worry and stress. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackwood," Maria said quietly. "I don't want to bother you, but I wanted to ask how Victoria is feeling." He looked up with tired but grateful eyes. "She's doing well physically, but she's having trouble understanding what happened. The doctors explained about the poisoning, but she can't remember much from the past week. It's probably a blessing that she doesn't remember how sick she was." "That must be very difficult for her," Maria said. "It is," Mr. Blackwood agreed. "She keeps asking about the nurse who was taking care of her. She remembered Jennifer Walsh being kind to her, and she can't understand how someone she trusted could have tried to hurt her." Maria's heart ached for Victoria. The young woman had to deal not only with recovering from poisoning, but also with the betrayal of someone she had considered a caregiver. "Mr. Blackwood," Maria said carefully, "would it be appropriate for me to visit Victoria? I know I'm just a member of the cleaning staff, but I was wondering if she might like to meet the person who helped discover what was happening to her." Mr. Blackwood's face brightened. "Maria, Victoria has been asking about you. She wants to thank you personally for saving her life. I think a visit would mean a great deal to her." The next day, Maria nervously entered Victoria's room during her lunch break. She had changed from her work uniform into her best dress and had brought a small bouquet of flowers from her own garden. Victoria was sitting up in bed, looking much better than she had in over a week. Her color was returning, and though she was still thin and weak, her eyes were alert and bright. "You must be Maria," Victoria said with a warm smile. "Please sit down. I've been hoping to meet you." Maria sat in the chair beside the bed, feeling awkward and out of place among all the expensive equipment and luxury furnishings. "I'm glad to see you're feeling better, Miss Blackwood. You gave everyone quite a scare." "Please, call me Victoria," the young woman said. "My father told me what you did for me. You saved my life when no one else realized I was being poisoned. I just noticed things that seemed wrong," Maria said modestly. "Anyone could have done the same thing." Victoria shook her head. "No, Maria. My father hired the best doctors in the world, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. You saw what trained medical professionals missed. That takes special insight and courage." They talked for nearly an hour. Maria was surprised to discover that Victoria was nothing like the spoiled rich girl she had expected. Victoria was intelligent, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in other people's lives. She asked about Maria's family, her work, and her dreams for the future. "You mentioned that your daughter is studying nursing," Victoria said. "That must make you very proud." "Isabella has always wanted to help people," Maria replied. "She's working very hard to become a good nurse, not like—" She stopped, not wanting to say anything negative about Walsh. "Not like Jennifer," Victoria finished quietly. "I've been thinking about her a lot. My father explained what she did and why she did it. It's hard to understand how someone who chose to become a nurse could deliberately hurt a patient." "I think she lost her way," Maria said carefully. "Maybe she started nursing for good reasons, but something changed her heart." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "My father wants to press for the maximum prison sentence, but I've been wondering if that's the right approach. Don't get me wrong. What she did was terrible, and she needs to face consequences. But I also think she needs help for whatever was driving her to such desperate actions." Maria was impressed by Victoria's compassionate response to someone who had tried to kill her. It showed a maturity and wisdom that many people twice her age didn't possess. "What will happen to her?" Maria asked. "She'll go to trial," Victoria said. "My father's lawyers are handling the prosecution. But I'm also thinking about setting up a fund to help healthcare workers who are struggling financially. Maybe if people like Jennifer had more support, they wouldn't become so bitter and resentful." This conversation revealed something important about Victoria's character. Despite having been the victim of a terrible crime, she was thinking about how to prevent similar situations in the future. She wasn't just focused on revenge. She wanted to address the underlying problems that had led to her poisoning. Over the following weeks, as Victoria recovered her strength, she and Maria developed an unlikely friendship. Victoria was fascinated by Maria's life experiences and her practical wisdom, while Maria was impressed by Victoria's intelligence and genuine desire to make a positive difference in the world. Victoria learned that Maria's daughter Isabella was struggling to pay for nursing school. Without being asked, Victoria quietly arranged for a scholarship that would cover Isabella's remaining tuition and expenses. When Maria discovered this, she was overwhelmed by the generosity. "Victoria, this is too much," Maria protested. "You don't owe me anything." "I don't owe you," Victoria agreed. "I want to help because Isabella is going to be an excellent nurse, just like her mother is an excellent person. Besides, investing in good healthcare workers benefits everyone." The trial of Jennifer Walsh took place 3 months later. Maria testified about what she had witnessed, and the security camera footage provided clear evidence of Walsh's actions. The former nurse was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. During the sentencing hearing, Victoria asked to speak to the court. "Jennifer Walsh committed a terrible crime against me, but I don't think she's an evil person. I believe she was someone who lost hope and made devastating choices as a result. I hope that during her time in prison, she can get the help she needs to understand why she went so wrong." Victoria also announced the establishment of the St. Mary's Healthcare Workers Support Foundation, which would provide financial assistance, counseling services, and career development opportunities for hospital staff who were struggling with personal or professional challenges. Healthcare workers carry enormous responsibilities and often face difficult working conditions, Victoria explained to the press. "If we want them to provide the best possible care, we need to support them as people, not just as employees." The foundation was funded with a significant donation from the Blackwood family fortune, and it quickly became a model for other hospitals around the country. Maria was offered a position as the foundation's community outreach coordinator, a role that would pay significantly more than her cleaning job and allow her to help identify hospital workers who might benefit from the foundation's services. "I don't have any experience with that kind of work," Maria protested when Victoria offered her the position. "You have the most important qualification," Victoria replied. "You care about people, and you notice when something isn't right. Those skills are more valuable than any college degree." Maria accepted the position and discovered that she had a natural talent for connecting with people and understanding their needs. Her background as a cleaning lady actually helped her relate to the hospital's support staff, who often felt invisible and undervalued. Isabella graduated from nursing school with honors and was offered a position at St. Mary's Hospital. On her first day of work, she proudly pinned her nursing badge to her uniform while her mother watched with tears of joy. "Remember what you told me about the oath nurses take," Maria said to her daughter. "Promise me you'll always honor that commitment to do no harm." "I promise, Mama," Isabella replied. "I'll never forget that being a nurse means being trusted with people's lives." The relationship between Victoria and Maria continued to grow stronger over time. Victoria often said that Maria had given her more than just her life back. She had given her a new perspective on what really mattered. The experience of being poisoned had shown Victoria how fragile life could be, but meeting Maria had shown her the importance of paying attention to the people around her. "Before I got sick, I was so focused on my charity work that I thought I understood how to help people," Victoria explained to a magazine interviewer. "But I was working from a distance, writing checks and organizing events. Maria taught me that real help comes from seeing people as individuals and caring about their specific situations." Maria, meanwhile, discovered that her instincts and life experience were valuable in ways she had never imagined. The woman who had once felt invisible as she cleaned hospital hallways was now a respected voice in healthcare advocacy. A year after the poisoning incident, St. Mary's Hospital held a special ceremony to honor Maria's contribution to patient safety. The hospital's board of directors presented her with an award recognizing her as Healthcare Hero of the Year. As Maria stood at the podium accepting her award, she looked out at the audience of doctors, nurses, administrators, and other hospital workers. Victoria sat in the front row, beaming with pride. I want to thank everyone who has supported me this year, Maria said into the microphone. But most of all, I want to remind all of us that healthcare is about caring for people. It doesn't matter whether you're a world-famous surgeon or someone who empties the trash cans. We all have a responsibility to watch out for our patients' well-being. She paused and looked directly at Victoria. Sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply pay attention and care enough to act when something isn't right. We all have the power to make a difference in someone else's life. The audience gave Maria a standing ovation, but she was most proud of the smile on Victoria's face. The young woman who had once been dying from poison was now healthy, engaged, and using her resources to help others. The cleaning lady who had saved her life had found her own calling in the process. As Maria looked around the hospital where this incredible journey had begun, she thought about how much had changed since that rainy night when she first noticed something wrong with Victoria's bag. One decision to pay attention and act with courage had saved a life, exposed a criminal, and created opportunities for positive change that would benefit countless other people. Sometimes, Maria reflected, the most ordinary people in the most ordinary circumstances have the power to do extraordinary things. All it takes is the willingness to notice when something isn't right, and the courage to do something about it. For intensive care unit, for emergency treatment, the contaminated floor was removed, and doctors began administering medications to counteract the poison in her system. Mr. Blackwood was informed about the situation, and his reaction was a mixture of rage and relief. You mean someone has been deliberately poisoning my daughter? And this cleaning lady discovered it. He found Maria in the hallway and took her hands in his. I don't know how to thank you. You saved Victoria's life when all our expensive doctors and specialists couldn't figure out what was wrong. Maria felt embarrassed by the attention. I just noticed things that seemed wrong. Anyone could have done the same thing. No, Mr. Blackwood said firmly. You cared enough to pay attention and brave enough to take action. Most people would have minded their own business. As the police arrived to arrest Walsh, Maria watched the former nurse being led away in handcuffs. She felt sorry for the woman in some ways. Walsh had clearly been struggling with personal problems and had made terrible choices. But Maria also felt justice was being served. The investigation that followed revealed that Walsh had been slowly poisoning Victoria for nearly a week. She had been careful to use substances that wouldn't show up on standard toxicology tests, which was why the doctors had been unable to identify the cause of Victoria's illness. Walsh had also been stealing medical supplies and selling them to supplement her income. Her resentment toward wealthy patients had grown over time, and Victoria had become the target of her misplaced anger. Dr. Harrison later explained to Maria that Victoria's prognosis was good. The antidotes were working, and her organs were beginning to function normally again. She'll make a full recovery, thanks to you, he said. But Maria knew the real test would be whether Victoria woke up. The young woman had been unconscious for days, and the poison had done significant damage to her body. Everyone was waiting to see if she would open her eyes and speak again. She carefully noted the location of the contaminated bag and left the supply room. Tomorrow, she would have to figure out how to expose Walsh without putting herself in danger. The nurse had already shown she was willing to commit murder. She wouldn't hesitate to hurt a cleaning lady who discovered her secret. As Maria walked home through the empty streets, she thought about the terrible irony of the situation. Victoria Blackwood had everything money could buy, the best medical care, a devoted father, and a life full of opportunities. But none of that could protect her from someone she trusted. Maria, who had very little money and no formal education, might be the only person who could save Victoria's life. She had grown up learning to notice things that others missed, and those skills were now more valuable than any medical degree. The rain had stopped, and the city was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic. Maria looked up at the hospital lights still glowing in the darkness and made a silent promise. She would find a way to expose Jennifer Walsh and save Victoria Blackwood, no matter what it cost her personally. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Maria was ready to fight for justice. She had seen evil hiding behind a nurse's uniform, and she wouldn't let it win.